Hello and welcome to Used Car Heaven. On this week's programme, we investigate why you would buy a new car when you could have two very nearly new examples, something like a T registration Ford Focus or a T registration Volkswagen Golf. Both practically brand new. They've only done nominal mileage, but they're less than list price. And in part two of the programme, two big car bargains, a Vauxhall Omega and a Rover 800 Sterling, on this week's Used Car Heaven. What are the trade making of the Focus at the moment?
For ourselves, in the used car market, it's doing very, very well indeed. Obviously, because it's very, very recent onto the market, for us to have them within 6 months old, obviously, and the savings the customers can get on them, we do very, very well with them. I think in the new car market, they're doing quite well as well.
What about private buyers? How are they viewing the Focus? Is it catching on as the Escort was such a big seller?
What you've got with any car when it's launched is effectively, it's very radical. When you look at this, it is a very, very strikingly looking car. So for some people that have been used to the Escort and the very, very bland lines, it's different, so it takes a little bit of time to settle in with it, but I do think it's had a very, very good sort of reception, really.
And any problems? I mean, when cars first come out, they tend to have one or two little niggles.
No, the only thing that we've encountered with these is actually the boot lock on them, and that's the only thing that seems to be a commonplace with the actual boot latch on them just coming loose, and that's it. But apart from that, no, in all fairness, the car has very, very good reviews from the press, and it's also got very, very good reviews from the customers that we've sold them to.
How many models are there in the range? I mean, there's lots of different variants out there.
Yeah, they do. At the moment, there's the 1.4, the 1.6, the 1.8, and there's the Z-Tech engine. They do the basic one, there's the LX, and there's the Gear. There's quite a few variants, actually, throughout the range.
So how are the prices of the Focus holding up? What was this new? What's it worth now?
This particular model with the 1.6 gear 5-door, this would have set you back in the region of around about £14,500. We've got this one now, which is, I would say, just coming up for 6 or 7 months old, 10,000 miles. We've got this up at £11,500. So there's still a good saving on them. Whatever car that is new will take a little bit of a dip in the first sort of time anyway, within the first 12 months. That's always its harshest period. But not too bad, really. Not bad at all.
Now, there's no doubt that Ford took a huge gamble when they decided to launch the Focus. After all, when you've had a car that's been as popular as the Escort, that we've loved over the years despite its shortcomings after all, but it's sold by the millions, you've got to have a car to replace it that's going to be excellent. A car that's perhaps going to be radical, that's good to drive, that's solid, that's reliable. Well, Ford have certainly got it right with the Focus, that's for sure. I'm a little bit concerned that there aren't that many Focuses on the road, or there's that perception that there's not that many Focuses on the road, but they are selling very well. This is a 1.6 gear. It's done, 10,000 miles, but it's got everything on. It is such a good car to drive. It feels solid. It feels secure. You can really throw it around. On the original launch of the Focus, which I went on in France, we were taken to a small race circuit where Ford had set up a bit of a handling course for us to throw the car around, turn the traction control off and have a bit of fun. And never once did the Focus step out of line. It really is that good to drive. This 1.6 injection engine produces 99 brake horsepower, and there's plenty of power there. It really does drive very well. There's also a 1.4, a 1.8, and a newly introduced 2-litre petrol engine to the Focus range. Now, of course, you could also have the Focus as a saloon or as an estate, but I think, for me, this 5-door hatchback looks the most attractive of the cars. It's amazing how well Ford have managed to create so much room inside the cabin. Lots of nice touches like the cup holders, a thing for the pen, and it's a very, very comfortable car to drive, and plenty of space inside too, which is so vital for this size of car. There's no doubt that the Focus is just such a different looking car because of its New Edge design styling by Ford. They first introduced New Edge design styling to the car, or the Ka, and then brought it to the Puma, and then the Cougar, and then finally the Focus. And it is just so different. It's one of those cars that you either love or you hate. I don't think there's any middle ground where you could say, well, I don't think the Focus is bad. You either like the Focus or you don't. Personally, I like it. Ford are also just about to introduce New Edge design styling to the front of the newly revised Fiesta as well. If you're looking for a second-hand Focus, it may be worth hanging on for a while because there will be plenty of them about in the market in the next 6 or 9 months. And certainly there will be some bargains to be found.
This particular model is a 1.6 IS 5-door with metallic paint. This one has the benefit of having air conditioning on it. If you went to a main dealer for this particular model, it would probably cost you circa £14,500 to £15,000. That's what its recommended retail price would be.
And you're selling this for?
We've got this one up at £13,000, or just a pound short of. It's delivery mileage. It is on a T-reg, as obviously at the moment the V's have been out obviously for around about 1 month so far, but this is a pre-registered vehicle on a T-plate, so it's a saving of approximately up to £2,000.
So where do you source these cars from?
This particular one, in all honesty, we have actually brought in from Ireland, so it's a Republic of Ireland vehicle. Sometimes there is a slight difference on specification, but they always conform to the EU anyway, so there's no problem then for servicing or warranty issues, and the cars are virtually the same.
The specification is almost identical, and there are no other downsides. Do you still get the same warranty and all the benefits and the guarantee that you'd expect?
Certain manufacturers do have a downside to the warranties. Some of them will actually, where you might buy the vehicle over here, could have 3 years. If you buy them at a Republic of Ireland vehicle, may only get 1 year. What you can look at that is an extended warranty can only cost you £200, and yet you can be saving £2,000 on the vehicle, so you can still be £1,800 in front. We do very, very well with them. Obviously, we do sell the vehicles on price. It's exactly what we're here for.
And of course with the Golfs, they're just so well built and so reliable.
Volkswagen are renowned for the build quality, obviously. Even in the previous model going into this one, they're very, very good. They're very safety conscious, the Germans, but in all fairness, they are under increasing pressure from other manufacturers. When we revert back to something like the Ford Focus, the actual build quality on that is far, far higher than what it was on the Escorts. So as much as they've led the way, they've just got to keep on top now, because the other manufacturers are getting far, far more safety conscious.
Now perhaps the key thing, if you were choosing between the Golf and the Focus, is residual values in 3 or 4 years' time when you come to change it down the line. How is that going to hold up, and what will the difference, do you think, be, and which is the better car to buy?
Hard to say. What you've got with the Ford Focus, because it's literally only been out 6 or 7 months, it's very, very hard to actually get a grip of what the residual values are going to be. They do seem to keep good money in such a short time. Now, Volkswagen have an excellent reputation. They are a slightly dearer product up front, but there again, you do obviously retain that when you come to sell the vehicle because of the residual value. When you're looking at these two cars head to head, specification-wise and money-wise, the Ford Focus would actually win. It is the slightly later model into the market, and it does look a radical car, and it's very, very good. If it comes to putting your own money in it, very, very honestly, I think the Volkswagen might have the stronger edge in, I would say, in a 3-year turn cycle. I think you might find that the Volkswagen has slightly the upper hand on value, but only slightly.
Now, this latest incarnation of the Volkswagen Golf was introduced some 2 years ago in October 1997, and this is affectionately known as the Mark IV Golf. Golfs have been around such a long time, and again, it's a car that we've taken to in the UK, particularly models like the GTI range. This is the 1.6S. As we've already mentioned, this is a brand new car. It's only done just over 40 miles, but it's some £2,000 less than list price. This also has air conditioning on as an extra. What you do find though in the Golf range is that they're more basic. There's less equipment inside as standard. Air conditioning, as I've just mentioned, is not standard. We've got this on this particular model, but on something like the Focus 1.6 gear, it is standard. You get a quality stereo system in that as well. You do get a stereo system in this, but no CD changer, no electric windows. You get dual airbags in this. And altogether, it just feels a very, very solid, reliable car. You know it's been well engineered. Now, driving-wise, the criticism of the latest Golf is that they've been made a bit soft, particularly on models like the new GTIs. And I think that's a fair point, because it certainly doesn't feel as good to drive as the Focus does. The steering is less precise, less accurate. It tends to roll around a bit more in corners than the Focus does, which is quite surprising really, considering how good Golfs have been in the past. Again, in the Golf range, good choice of engines, 1.4, 1.6, 1.8, the 1.8 GTIs, the 1.8 turbo GTIs, there's a 2.3 V5 and two 1.9 diesel models, a non-turbo and a turbo diesel. Insurance groups are pretty reasonable, and again, fuel consumption all round in the range is very good too. Something like this 1.6S will get you easily 40 miles to the gallon. So will you find a Mark IV Golf cheap? Well, the honest answer to that is no, because Volkswagen Golfs hold their value very well, as the Volkswagen range does in general. If you looked around for, say, the base introductory 1.4 model, well, you might find an early example from 2 years ago for about £10,500, but certainly not much less than that. And considering that that only cost about £13,000 new, you can see just how well the values of the Golfs are holding up. So what about interior space on these two cars? Well, the Focus, first of all, Ford have actually been very clever because they've produced a small to medium-sized hatchback car with bags of room for 5 people. 5 adults would very easily sit in this car. Plus you get 3 rear proper seat belts as well, which is excellent. What about boot space on the Focus? Well, you need the key to open it, the boot, a couple of zaps, and again, bags of luggage space in the back of the Focus. On the Golf, well, it's a similar sort of size to the Focus, perhaps not quite as much legroom and perhaps not quite as comfortable. The seats are a bit firmer in the Golf and it feels a little bit more cramped than the Focus. Good amount of headroom back there for somebody like me who's 6 foot or so. And boot space on the Golf, well, perhaps slightly bigger than the Focus. So, which of these two cars would be our choice? Which would we recommend to you? Well, if you're rather conservative with a small C, that is, you'd probably go towards the Golf, because you've had a Golf before, you've liked it, it's been safe, it's been solid, it's been reliable, and the residuals are rock solid. It looks like the Golfs from the past as well. It's not very well equipped at the end of the day. You do have to pay for all the little extras, which you don't quite as much have to do if you go towards something like the Ford Focus. This is a 1.6 gear and it's got all the toys on it. The Focus is also unmistakably the better car to drive. So if we had to pay 11, 12, 13,000 pounds for cars, which would we go for? Well, for 11,500 pounds, I'd go for this Focus 1.6 gear. That's all for part 1 of Used Car Heaven. Join us again soon in part 2, when we've got 2 big car bargains, a Rover 800 and a Vauxhall Omega. Hello and welcome to part 2 of Used Car Heaven. Now, I have to admit, I'm a bit of a fan of big cars, big luxury barges. So if you're looking towards something like that and you're not going to go for one of the German marques like BMW, Mercedes and Audi because they're too expensive, well, why not look at something like these two? A Vauxhall Omega or a Rover 800. Now, if you're looking for a big car bargain, there are plenty to be had, aren't there, Tim?
Absolutely.
I mean, we looked at a Ford Scorpio a couple of weeks ago. This is a Rover 800.
Yep.
Sterling. What was this new? What's it going for now?
This particular car would have set back the prospective buyer in 1997. This had a list price of just under £24,000. Now, 38,000 miles later, and just under 2 years, the car is worth £8,000.
Ouch.
Just a bit. Very, very, very good value for money. Not a good thing for the initial buyer, whether that be a company car, effectively first time, or a private buyer. Somebody has taken a severe beating on price with this first time round.
Now, before you start laughing uncontrollably at the thought of buying a Rover 800, as recommended to you by me, just think of this. The Rover 800s are the cars that chauffeur government ministers around. Tony Blair might be seen in one. Heaven, John Prescott took one 250 yards so it wouldn't spoil his wife's hairdo at the recent party conference. So surely they're all right for you and me, mere mortals. Well, I think they actually are. This Rover 800 Sterling has a 2-litre engine. It's a little bit underpowered, only 136 brake horsepower. but it's just so lavishly equipped. It's almost like a car-like version of a Range Rover, because all the controls and the quality of the leather and the wood look like you get in a Range Rover. And it's very, very comfortable. It's very quiet. It's very refined. This has done, well, 38,000 miles. It's a couple of years old. But just look at the price of it. £8,000. The Rover 800s like this were first introduced way back in 1991, so they've actually been around a long time. Of course, they're now finished. You can't buy the new Rover 800s. The new 75 replaces that. But if you looked around for something like a K-Reg 820i, either in saloon or hatchback, you could find one less than £3,000, and you could even find one at that sort of money with little miles on the clock. So am I managing to convince you yet that perhaps a Rover 800 might be a good buy? Well, I hope I am, because I've actually got a little bit of a soft spot for the 800. I've never actually owned one, but always liked the look of one because they're just bargains. I mean, buying one new, you must be completely round the bend, because if it was your money, you just might as well go and throw it down the drain. £24,000 for this 2-litre sterling new, £8,000 less than £8,000 now. And that's the same with all the 800 cars. There's a 2-litre, a 2-litre turbo, 2.7 V6, and also a 2.5 turbo diesel. The main disadvantage that the 800 has over the likes of the Vauxhall Omega and the Ford Scorpio is that these cars are front-wheel drive, which, if anything, is the main disadvantage. But quality-wise, I've had a good look around this car, looked inside and out, and I can see very little wrong with it. It's well put together. There are no rattles, squeaks, or any other hideous noises emanating from the car so far. Whether that will last in the future, I don't quite know, but the dashboard looks rather outdated. The wood trim is pretty awful, but the quality of the seats is very good, and the leather excellent too. And as long as you look after this sort of car, well, keep it well serviced, it will go for miles and miles and miles. Just imagine yourself as John Two Jags Prescott. You have chauffeur-driven Jaguars at your disposal, but sometimes you have to take other government cars, other government limousines. So sometimes Fatty Prescott has to drive around in a Rover 800. Why not? That's what I say. How do you rate the Vauxhall Omega then, Tim?
A good vehicle in its class, actually. Been out a long time now when you consider that they were actually launched in 1994, and they've had very, very little change. They've had the occasional facelift and this, that and the other. They've still got the same engine lineups throughout, but not a bad car, not at all.
And it's a car, of course, that's built in Germany, so it has that so-called German build quality. It actually is a well put together car, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. When you actually come down to build quality, door fixtures, trim fixtures, they do seem to be put together very, very well.
What was this car when it was new, and what's it retailing for now? This is an S registration.
This is a 2-litre GLSI automatic one. So this one would have probably cost you just under £21,000 with the automatic box. Now, 18 months later, this will probably set you back just only about £10,600.
So it's losing a lot of money at the end of the day.
It's probably lost the thick end of thought, around about 45–46% of its value.
Any problems you've encountered with these? Anything go wrong?
No, to be very honest with you, they're a very, very well put together car, as you stated. Like, the build quality seems to be very, very good with them, so we don't seem to encounter any or persistent troubles with them at all, no.
The Omega is proof that Vauxhall really can build a quality executive car. The Omega was first introduced in mid-1994 to replace the ageing Senator and the Carlton. They decided to sort of merge the two cars into one, something not quite as big as the Senator, but not quite as small as the Carlton. And so the Omega was born. And it sold incredibly well, particularly in this country since its original launch. It's not a car that's perhaps good enough to take on the likes of BMW, Mercedes and Audi, but it's certainly seen off the likes of the Ford Scorpio and the Rover 800. It's very comfortable, it's very luxurious, good choice of engines and bags of room. Perhaps the Omega's biggest letdown is the quality inside and the quality of the plastics around the dashboard, which are a bit of a letdown. This is a 2-litre 16-valve Omega producing 136 brake horsepower. Now, if anything, the 2-litre engines are a little bit harsh and a bit coarse. There's also an 8-valve 2-litre engine, which is even less powerful than this. But the pick of the engines in the Omega range would be the 2.5 V6 with 168 brake horsepower, or certainly the 3-litre V6, which comes in Elite or MV6 form, with a 210 brake horsepower engine. It really is a stormer of a car. Now, all of the engines in the Omega range are very good, very economical for such a big car. They're big executive cruisers that will sit all day on the motorway doing plenty and plenty of miles. And if you're looking around on the used market for an Omega, you will find some with very high mileages. But as long as they've been well looked after, properly serviced and regularly too, it shouldn't be a problem. Look for something like an early M-Reg Omega, 2-litre 8-valve M-Reg Omega with perhaps 50,000 miles on the clock, could cost you as little as £5,000. This is a car with 17,000 miles on the clock, and this is only £10,500. So what about space-wise for passengers in the back of the Rover 800? Well, as you can see, it really is quite literally a limousine. I mean, it's just so comfortable back here. You can just imagine being chauffeured about as a government minister or something. Very, very nice and very smart indeed. And boot space, again, very, very big boot, and a CD auto changer as standard on the Sterling. Moving on to the Omega, maybe not quite as much space in the back of the Omega, although having said that, it's not bad at all. There's a good deal of legroom, plenty of space for 5 adults back here, and the boot on the Omega is again very, very big, if anything slightly bigger than the 800s. So there we are, 2 big car bargains for you. A Vauxhall Omega for just over £10,000, a Rover Sterling for £8,000. If you're looking for this sort of car, the things to mainly beware of, apart from looking for something that's got a reasonable mileage on, are these cars have generally got lots of electric things on, electric windows, electric sunroofs, which are prone to going wrong. Make sure all of those things work. If the car's got air conditioning, make sure the air conditioning or the climate control system also works properly, because recharging the system and having new parts put into the air conditioning system can be very, very expensive. So which of these 2 cars would I choose? Well, the Omega is perhaps the better car to drive over the Rover, but for £8,000 for this Sterling, well, it has to be the car for me to drive home tonight, I'm afraid. That's it for this week's Used Car Heaven. Join us again at the same time on Men Motors for more great bargains next week.